back. Hello. How are you doing, Matt?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
I'm all right. It's been ages. We've had like work, illness, like it's just that bloody time of year. It's the flu-y, awful season.
Yep.
But we made it back, and I'm excited because this one, it's been a while since I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, it's been a while, but rewatching it, I was like, no, this is as much fun as I remember it being.
Yeah.
I by no means is it the best Hammer movie ever made.
No.
And I mean, it was kind of the tipping point of the end of Hammer, but.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's quite uneven.
It's very uneven, and it has some really dumb moments. But Kronos, Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, is such a fun time, and it's got such a cool idea, as we'll get to as we talk through the movie. But you get that my favorite scene in the movie is when they're like, well, there's so many different versions of vampires. There's like thousands of them. And I'm like, oh man, this could have been such a cool series of them just like, what do these kind of vampires do? Show me all the different vampires.
Yeah, and that's that. It's got so much promise in it. And
it does.
Because it tanked.
Yes, yeah.
Because they clearly set it up as a series.
Yeah, absolutely. It was intended from the start, I think.
They even were going to, hence the Kronos thing, they were going to do like time travel and all sorts, so he was going to end up in all sorts of places.
Yeah.
But it tanked, and so did all the hope of it going anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. Brian Clemens, the director, this was the only movie he directed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is sad, really, because he's a really good writer. He wrote
this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote this. He wrote a load of mostly TV stuff. So like Avengers, he wrote like some Danger Man, I think. Like all those sorts of really cool things. He also wrote Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which I love. And one of
I like that. It's a great movie.
My favourite of the Harryhausen, one of my favourites, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Oh, wonderful film.
Which also has Carolyn Monroe in it. Sadly, he also wrote Highlander 2: The Quickening. But
you got to pay them bills sometimes.
Everybody's got dogs in there. But sadly, this was the only movie he directed.
That is a shame.
Carolyn Monroe it's one of her favourite movies that she was in. And
I think it's a really good time.
Yeah, it is.
I do. And
she loved the director. She said he was wonderful.
Well, on the direction, there are undeniably some ropey shots in this. But there are also some really effective and nice shots in this. Like, I think, for a first and only movie, it's pretty good. Yeah. From a visual standpoint. But when did you first see this? When did you first see Kronos?
I think I saw this on like a late night TV thing, and I think it was on double bill with oh my god, what's it called? The
I don't know.
Oh,
Vampire Circus.
It was
I'll just say random movies
until
until
the vampire one. The other comedy one that was similar time. Oh my god, I can't remember it.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It's the one the sort of jokey one where they like vampire hunters, and they go, and there's the big ball scene with all the vampires in it in the ballroom, and don't say Van Helsing. It's not Van Helsing.
Yeah, Blade. No, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Oh god, the one that was done by the guy who bloody.
The one that was done by the guy. This is not helping.
The disgraced director who did terrible things and did A Runner to France.
I have no idea.
He was married to Sharon Tate.
I still have no idea.
Oh god,
it'll come back to you. Just shout it out at whatever point of the movie we're talking about. Just shout it out when it comes to you. I think I first saw this on the Sci-Fi Channel or something.
Yeah.
Well, when it was Sci-Fi Channel, before it became Sci-Fi, actually. When it was Sci-Fi Channel proper. When it was good, when it had promise. Back in those days.
Sci-Fi Channel over here completely collapsed really quickly, didn't it?
It collapsed when they changed the name. I directly correlate it with them calling themselves Siffy.
It was never as good as the American one, which always annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah, it was good for like a hot minute though.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, they had when they started, it was kind of good. They still didn't have, all the stuff that they wanted. The Fearless Vampire Killers.
There we go.
Roman Polanski.
Dude, I haven't seen that film in forever.
Yeah,
that might have to be watched.
I've seen this more than I've seen Fearless Vampire Killers, but it was on a double bill with that.
That's a pretty cool double bill.
It is a good double bill, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, obviously we are kind of in part covering this because of Horst Janssen's passing recently, which kind of brought it to our attention. Now, of course, they're also doing a remaster, or they've released a remaster.
Yeah.
4K, which looks superb. I'm not sure I want to spend that much money on one movie. It's not Godzilla related.
If it was like Lost Boys or
that's the thing. If it was like a one of my top 5 movies, I totally would. It just feels like a lot for just this movie, and it's a movie that I enjoy, but the DVD version's kind of fine.
Yep,
it's enough for now. But anyway, shall we get into it?
Yeah. Oh, I will say before I did find out that Horst Janssen was in the German version of Sesame Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's got one of those German faces.
Yeah.
That, you're like, I've seen this man in a million films. And they're like, no, actually, no, I don't think I have. I think there's just people that look a lot like him. But, but anyway, we open on the cross. It's with the, a Hammer production. It's a very Hammer opening with the cross. But it then changes because we pan up to see victim number 1. This lovely young girl who is looking in the mirror, talking to her friend, and she's talking about, it's a sin. And her friend's like, what? And she's like, well, vanity is a sin, right? And she's there busy brushing her hair. I think her other friend goes to pick flowers.
Pick flowers, yeah.
Yeah.
Her hair, isn't
it? And then we get the POV shot. It's very slashery in places, this movie. It does tend to do the first person perspective
shots.
Yeah, but we see the hooded man approach. And that's a good shot, actually. The shot in the mirror.
Yeah.
When you see the hood in the mirror, that's a great shot. Yeah. And we see that she looks up in shock, but then she's kind of elated and happy and smiling.
Yep.
And she embraces the man. Again, shot through the mirror, which is quite a cool shot. And then you get the blood on the mirror as well, don't you? I think the blood falls down, and then you hear the screaming, and her friend...
That is one thing that does get quite funny in this movie.
What?
The way the blood gets splattered.
Yes.
Like, on random things.
Random objects, yeah.
The funniest part is, even much later on, it even ends up on the bell of the church at some point. You just think, sure, but how? Yeah.
But then her, I think it's her father, isn't it? It's meant to be her father.
Marcus?
Oh, it's Marcus. Yeah, of course it is. It's Marcus. Yeah, Marcus finds finds Anne, and she's just kind of staring off into the distance. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And he kind of gets off his horse and walks over. And then he realizes, of course, she's looking at her friend or sister or whatever. Probably sister.
I got the impression that she was her maid.
Okay, yeah,
because
maybe.
The way they're dressed, the main woman is dressed in like a blue sort of dress, and the other one's dressed sort of quite soberly. Yeah. So I presumed she was her maid.
But Marcus approaches, only to discover that she's ancient now, and she turns around looking all old.
Yeah, that actress was probably 30.
Yeah, probably. She's all old, and she's got blood coming from her mouth. Now, the film very quickly establishes that they just fucking die from this. Yeah. But I guess because they wanted to prove... I guess because they wanted to prove that, it's an age thing. It's sucking the life. I guess if they thought, oh, it was just dead, we wouldn't necessarily realize. So I guess they made it so that they're alive for a little bit, just to be like, look, they're really old, and then they're dead.
Yeah.
But you know, it works. It's
because I mean, with the next victim, you get the whole trying to get home thing. So which I think works slightly better.
Yeah, I think so too. And we then get the logo, the Captain Kronos logo, which again, it feels very TV show. Logo. It's a cool logo, but it's a very TV show thing. Yeah. You've got your cold open, and now we're getting into the first episode. You know, it really does feel like it's.
You know, it does make sense when you consider the the director had worked almost exclusively on TV stuff, and you know, he worked. Avengers. It does feel very Avengers-y, actually.
Yes, it does, actually. Now that you've said that. Totally does.
English Avengers, not American Avengers.
Yeah, I always forget we have to qualify that.
Yeah.
So then we get scenes of Kronos and co riding a lot with credits going on.
Yeah.
Some really nice, nice landscapes and whatnot.
Yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it shows it, and again with the music and everything else, it's very swashbuckly. It's very adventure-y. I mean, this movie feels like a spaghetti western, really, but it's
I think that's kind of the thing they were going for. That they were trying to move. I guess they were trying to move Hammer in a sort of slightly more adventurous direction, which I think could have worked if I don't know, they'd have had more faith in it, because I don't think they had a lot of faith in this movie.
No, and you wonder how much of its failure is actually down to just not really advertising it well and publicizing it well and actually making a bigger deal out of it, you know. But yeah, I think it could have. It
does always surprise me that this has not been remade. Yeah,
it does feel like something that could be totally
a TV series, but this would be perfect for a TV series.
It really would. It really would. Anyway, Kronos comes across a young girl in the gallows in the middle of the forest, but in the gallows.
Stocks, not gallows.
Sorry, stocks. And she kind of looks up at him, and he's like, what crime have you committed? And she's like, I danced on a Sunday. And Kronos immediately frees her. Which I'm assuming she thought he was just going to cut her head off for dancing on a Sunday, but he frees her. And
dancing on a Sunday, that's the decapitation. That is.
Yeah, exactly. But he just kind of starts riding away immediately. He's like, "Well, you're free now. Goodbye." Which is kind of how this movie ends as well, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm leaving now," and she's like, "Okay, you must leave." It's like you could go together, but okay. He did nearly kill you with a really dumb idea at the end of this movie. But... Sorry, Matt's still ill. We might kill him off with this episode. So in any case, she chases after Kronos. Eventually gets on the cart, doesn't she?
Well, I like it. She says, she sort of says she wants to go with him, and so he says, "We're going east," and she just says, "That'll do."
Yeah, why not?
And I like basically that. I love the way they just pull off. It's like, well, you got to keep up then.
Yeah,
they like pull off, and she's got to try and she scrabbles to get on the back of the truck with Gorst.
Yeah,
who I think is my favorite character.
He is fantastic.
I love Gorst. He's so good. He's so cool.
Yeah, he's probably got some of the best lines in this movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, we then cut to some young girl's birthday. She's got a brand new bracelet. It's all fancy. She wants to go and show her friend to make her friend envious.
I think I do like the way they sort of make a big thing of the bracelet. It's like, oh, I might lose it. It's like, no, you won't. That's got a lock on it that not even a money lender could get off of you, sort of thing. Or it's like, it's as tight as a money lender, I think he says, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think he says it was her mother's bracelet.
Yeah, there's no way we will be using this to identify you later. This is not going to come out.
This will definitely come in late. It's useful later.
Yeah. But in any case, she heads out. On her way, she picks up some flowers. I think this is the mistake they make. Just don't stop to pick up flowers in the forest, because it's a bad idea. She picks up flowers, but we do get a really cool shot when the hooded man who is observing her, he walks past the flowers and they die. They're like alive and then they're dead when he walks past. It's a nice cut.
Yeah.
So she is also now being pursued, and eventually the hooded man just kind of surprises her. And again, she doesn't look terrified. She just looks somewhat concerned, and then kind of at peace. But then, of course, we see her with blood from her mouth, and we know what's happened.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Captain Kronos is camping for the evening. And they're all kind of they're all kind of getting ready for bed, aren't they? And I love when she's like, "Where am I going to sleep?" And he's like, "Well, there's only room for 2, so we've only got 2 blankets, so
yes, you've only got 2
make
blankets.
do."
Please yourself, sort of thing. Whatever, it's a case of mine or his, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And she talks about the logo. She's like, "What does the K stand for?" He's like, "Does it mean king? Is he a king?" It's like king. He's wearing a captain's uniform, you fool.
Listen, she's clearly
oh yeah, I suppose. All right, okay, maybe I'm being
girl.
Maybe I'm being harsh. So yeah, and he's like, no, it stands for Kronos. He was captain of the King's Guard, right? So he was related somewhat to the king, but
guessing German because that looks like a very Prussian jacket. It doesn't look English.
Yeah.
He is German, so I presume,
And we get here, maybe, I think it's the first time on film, but I get the impression she's asked a few times already. She's like, "What work do you do?"
Yeah.
And they're just like, "Oh, we're too busy to talk about that. We're going to bed," And it's like, "We're going to hold off on telling you what we're doing."
Yeah,
we'll tell you in the morning. Don't worry about it. It'd be fine.
Yeah, don't sort of, to pay no attention to the inordinate amount of, like, sharp objects and weird looking
stakes and yeah.
And those are some fancy ass stakes, I might add.
They are, yeah, they're very fancy.
They are beautifully carved stakes. They're not just any old wooden stakes.
Meanwhile, sorry?
He's got to have style.
Yeah, oh yeah. This movie has lots of style. It has we'll get to it a bit, but it has the most Japanese bar scene I've ever seen in an English movie.
That bar scene is just another,
It's like a lone wolf and cub scene. Randomly,
it's a man with no name scene, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's spaghetti western. You're right. Actually, it's because he's got the sword and it's filmed in that very. And if it was a gun, it would absolutely be a spaghetti western through and through. But the way it's shot, it kind of feels very Zatoichi, or
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I mean, a lot of those spaghetti westerns were all based on movies anyway. So
100%. Anyway, the daughter comes back. She's now ancient, and of course they use the unbreakable bracelet to identify her as their daughter. Doesn't the mother at first? She's like, "It's a burglar." Just like, I don't think the burglar was like 1 million years old.
Yeah,
didn't know how that worked.
She's clearly not a very successful one.
Yeah. But yes. So in any case, we then cut back to the next morning. She still has no goddamn clue what their job is. She's just going along with them. They ride past the swordsman gravestone, which we'll come back to.
Like a guy covered in plaster of Paris.
Well, yes, it does. Yes, but I think in universe, it's a very really impressive monument to a great man, a great swordsman.
Absolutely.
So anyway, Captain Kronos and co. They turn up at Marcus's place and they ask if Dr. Marcus is in there, and his like, I guess a villager or servant or something is so rude. He's like, yes, someone lives here by that name. Go away.
Yeah, what do you want?
And we get a kind of fake out friend scene. As Marcus comes out.
I like the way he just calls out his name and Marcus is sort of shaving.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and yeah, they do. That is quite a cool little thing where they
because he's holding the razor as well, isn't he? Because he was having the shave. So
they both look like they're about to sort of start something.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're not. They're good friends, and they embrace.
I love it. He calls him an old leech lover, which I thought was funny.
Yeah. Well, he's doctor, isn't he? So
yeah.
So they head inside, and meanwhile, she stays outside with the servant guy, and they start looking at stuff, and he's like looking at the steaks, and he's like, "What do these people do?" And she's like, because he's like, "Do you serve them?" And she's like, "No, I'm not their servant. I'm just like, I just jumped on this wagon. I'm just here now." Inside, Marcus is explaining what happened. That these girls have been found aged dramatically, and almost immediately they say, "Well, it's a vampire." And Marcus is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, it can't be vampirism because I know all about vampirism, and this is where we get that great explanation of
they had all their blood. They were just old.
Yeah. But he says, it's common. It's commonly known that vampires have the teeth and they suck the blood and drain the victims of blood. But there are many, many different types of vampires. There's like thousands of these bloody different things, all these different variants, and they all do different things. And what we have here are vampires that are draining people of life, not blood. It's a different form of vampire, which, as I said, I think would be such a cool idea to see him hunting these different vampires and working out how to defeat them, in each movie.
Yeah.
I quite like that as an idea.
Cool. And if he they're obviously constantly moving, so you would have got, different countries, versions of vampires, which would have been awesome. Because in real life, as I say, in real life, in real mythology, there are indeed many different versions of vampire. And so
it's just that Hollywood tends to only worry about one.
Yeah, pretty much the blood sucking kind. Because to be honest, the blood sucking kind is probably the coolest. But a lot of the other ones are just really horrible and monstrous and like eat babies and things. And
it's my favorite characters. The in What We Do in the Shadows is the guy who just sucks the life out of everyone. It's so funny.
He is
just bores people to death. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then they start discussing, and it's great foreshadowing. He starts saying, well, the different vampires there's different methods of killing vampires. I mean, it could be sunlight, it could be hanging, it could be silver. I mean, we might have to later on catch a vampire and do all kinds of fucking awful things before we find out exactly how to kill it. So just a little foreshadowing there, Marcus. Don't worry, but just saying.
Marcus,
just trial and error in this. I'm just saying.
You got a comfy chair over there, Marcus. You're right.
Because he mentions as well that she was wearing a crucifix, and that they were good God-fearing girls,
God-fearing Christian people.
But then of course he theorizes that he's like, well, I think it's mesmerism at play here, and that maybe they weren't in their right minds at the point that they were killed, and therefore they weren't God-fearing at the time, because they were kind of mesmerized and hypnotized into being in a different state, which I think would have worked far more effectively had the girls not screamed every time. But yeah, and it's kind of funny because I like that Marcus is then like, oh, vampires, that's ridiculous, and then they're like, but you called us here. You suspect this already. Like, why have you called Captain Kronos a vampire hunter if you do not suspect vampires, sir?
Was it just a coincidence? Did you not put two together?
Yeah. And then we see the grave of Isabella, with her friend mourning. Another nicely framed shot with the bell and stuff as she walks away from the grave. I thought was nice. But yeah, she heads into church, and We get this great shot again, another nice shot, as she sat there, and you think you see the cross reflected.
Yeah.
In shadow, and then the cross moves, and you're like, "What on earth?" And like it's like comes down like arms.
It's cool, but
it doesn't make much sense. But
it did make me. It does look like one of those wacky inflatable flailing arm things in the shadow.
Yeah, and it does suggest that when she walked in, someone was literally stood there T-posing.
like birds of garbage or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, what?
Don't mind me, I'm just a scarecrow.
Yeah. I'm here to scare crows out of this church. Kronos is having a wash. She kind of notices his scars and whatnot. Steals his towel. All very flirty things.
Yep.
He says to her, I guess you'll be moving on now. And she's like, oh no, I'll be staying. If you'll have me. And then it gets very Austin Powers.
It does, yeah.
Because you get this zoom as well in on her eyes and his eyes. He's like, oh yes, I'll have you.
I'll have you. Yeah, it is very Austin Powers.
But of course, the game's afoot, and off they go. She jumps in the back, and again, she's like, "What are we doing?" And finally, she gets the answer. He's like, "Oh yeah, didn't we tell you we're vampire hunters, dear?"
Yeah. We're vampire hunters, by the way. Just a small detail. Don't worry. You're in no danger. You're fine. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And now we get the same shot again, and it's lovely. It's wonderful. But what you said earlier, 100% right. Why is there fucking blood on the bell now?
Yeah.
There just is. It's a great shot.
There was a bat, so we're presuming that the
fine.
Dripped from the bat.
Fair enough.
That is a big splodge of blood.
It's a hell of a lot of blood.
Did
yeah.
you vomit on it?
It's a cool visual. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's a cool visual.
It is a cool visual.
So of course they enter, and they find a very, very, very old lady, or is it? Marcus is then I guess he just buries her straight away, right?
I presume, I guess so, because I don't think this one sort of doesn't hold on very long, does she? I think she's already dead. No,
because it kind of cuts to the graveyard, and then we get the entrance of the young lord, and the mother, who we only kind of see in shadow at first.
Yeah.
The copy I've got, which is probably why they did the 4K restoration, the darkness is so dark. Like, you could barely see a goddamn thing when it's dark.
Yeah, I must admit, the copy I've got is there are some
rough.
Scenes so dark.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that never used to bother me as a kid, No. Weirdly. Because I remember, speaking of Lone Wolf and Cub, the Baby Cart series, and a lot of those early Japanese, like kind of 60s, 70s Japanese movies, they're so dark. The dark is like unwatchably dark, especially when you had what was the name of that company? Vipco? Was it Vipco? They used to release like all of those. They were so frustrating because they were all so heavily cut to make it onto VHS in the UK. But they were always like, anything dark on those, just anything at night was like unwatchable on those.
Yeah.
But
you just got an occasional flash of blade which you could see, and that was about it.
Pretty much. So I'm assuming the 4K remaster will resolve that.
I presume so.
I would hope so for £50.
I mean, there were like 4 or 5, maybe not 4, but there's a couple of different versions on.
Oh yeah, it's packed. I think it's about 5 discs. It's
5 discs. I think so. There are a number of versions. I think one of the discs is all like
extras.
I think in extras,
yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
In any case, as we see the boy approach the statue, we see that it is actually the grave of Hagen, who is the 9th Lord of Duard. This is the youngest, I think, probably younger than his sister, boy, the Duard boy.
To be honest, I've always thought of them as the Dandy twins.
Yeah, they kind of are. I think this movie and this scene and the next couple of scenes with them does a reasonably good job of setting them up as the villains.
Yep.
I think it's a cool twist. It works.
Yeah, I think I was certainly.
It worked the first time I saw it.
I think these days I wouldn't fall for it, but when I was
a kid, yeah,
I was like, oh, you know, because it's like, oh, it's the handsome dude. He's clearly a fucking vampire, you know.
Well, and it's also because they pick someone who looks really youthful, and they're almost immediately contrasting this. And in the next scene, it's like, you know, Kronos is like, we're looking for someone really young looking, and then cuts to blonde boy.
I mean, they do make a stupid thing later on with the sister as well. When it's like it's a little too obvious when he says it, because with the sister, and he says, "Oh, she's young and beautiful," and it's like, yeah, funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know it turns out well.
yeah.
Spoilers. Turns out to not be the case, but it is quite funny when you think, isn't he supposed to be like a rugged vampire hunter? He wouldn't make that stupid statement, surely.
You would hope not.
I love the guy who plays the son. He was Shane Bennett Graham. He was Drogo, son of Voltan in Hulk Slayer.
Yes.
It was also in one of the other Hammers as well. I think was it Monster from Hell? Was it not Monster from Hell?
Actually, a rather relatively comparable.
Yeah, Frankenstein from Hell. He was in.
I love Hulk the Slayer, and it's very similar in that kind of like it's amazing but kind of naff.
Yeah, and I think Hulk the Slayer was one of my favourite films growing as a kid.
It's still one of my favourite go-to feel-good movies when I want to.
Yeah, and also it's still a great fantasy movie.
It is.
I wanted to be Crow.
Yeah.
Crow was my favourite. I wanted to be Crow.
Well, fair enough. Marcus approaches the boy and they talk about his father. He says that, well, you know, my father died in your arms, you remember. And they talk about the mother, and Marcus is like, "Oh my god, is she actually in there?" And then he looks in the carriage, and of course sees this fucking mummy. He's like, "Oh my god, she looks so old." And he's like, "Oh yes, it's grief age." And he says, "Well, you know, all the more I feel I should examine her." And the son's like, "No, you killed our father. As far as we're concerned, that's never gonna happen. She's never gonna trust you."
They are doing their best to make him look as shifty as fuck, Mike, because he's like
they are,
carriage, and he's clearly trying to hide his mother.
I think it's relatively effective. I do.
Yeah,
at least the first watch, it was fine. We then see something very strange going on. Kronos and co are burying toads.
Yeah.
And the slave girl is like, "What the? Has she got a name in this?"
Carla.
Oh yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember if she had a name or whether she was because she just kind of follows them around the whole time.
Yeah. Looking absolutely stunning with her with her lovely, beautiful doe eyes and yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're marking the spots of where they're burying these toads, and we will find out why shortly.
Yeah, of course.
And when you find out what they were doing, they must have had a fuck ton of toads to make this work.
A lot.
Like, I mean, the distance you're trying to cover in toads.
Yeah.
Like, how many dead toads do you carry, sir?
You do wonder where they pick up so many toads. It's like, do they hunt them and then, or do they buy them in bulk, or?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Meanwhile, Captain Kronos is smoking crack or something.
Chinese herbs.
Yes, Chinese herbs.
That doesn't sound sus at all, does it?
No, not at all. Well, that's what he tells the doctor anyway, isn't it? It's Chinese herbs. Because isn't he's carrying a fucking katana or something as well. He's got like a number of swords in this movie.
I love. That's one of the things I've always loved about.
I like it because it kind of like insinuates that he's traveled the world.
Yeah.
You know, on previous adventures and stuff. It's pretty cool.
He's got a cavalry saber and a katana. At this point, I always thought that it's a really cool. He has an amazingly cool look because
he really does.
got the officer's coat that he never actually wears properly. It's always like draped over his shoulders. Like,
it's never done up. Yeah, it's never done up.
Looking really cool, and he's got these two swords that he sort of like parades around with. And I love that he's when you see him sort of like meditating or something, he's got like, it looks like he's voguing. He has his hands like either side of his head at one point.
Yeah.
With like a flannel over his face, sort of thing. And then there's like there's other bits where he's sort of like he's clearly. So there's that they're trying to ramp up the sort of fact. Oh yeah, he's travelled. He's been to China and he's been to Japan. And
yeah.
He's learned all these meditative things, and I like that. And I think those sorts of things are done quite well because
I think so too.
They don't state those things.
That's the thing, dude. Like a modern movie would be like, when I was in Japan.
Yeah,
exactly. And you get the full explanation. Here it's like, no, he's carrying a katana. That's really weird. And then you think about it, and you're like, oh no, actually, that just means he's traveled the world, I guess, at this point in his life, and he's world traveled. I really like those touches. I think it's really cool. And again, like, it is like teenage boy fantasy movie,
absolutely.
It's great.
I absolutely, he's a perfect hero character. He's got that long blonde hair. He's got the sort of the stern German look.
Yeah.
He's tall and imposing. He's just fucking cool.
Yeah, I agree totally. So Marcus is like, shouldn't you be doing something? Other than smoking.
Yeah.
And Kronos is like, well, if the war has taught us anything, it's that there's a time to think, a time to plan, and a time to act. He says, there'll be plenty of time for that later. That time will come. Don't worry about it.
I do like the sort of, you've got that sort of the moment where I think it's Carla and Gorst talking, and Kronos is just sort of sat there, and I think she says, "Why are we doing all the work?" And it's like, well, because we have to, because he's got his own work, and he must prepare for that work. It's
he's like a lion. He sleeps. Yeah. He sleeps most of the day. He just needs like 10 minutes of action.
Yeah, and Gorst does a shitload of stuff in this movie.
He does. He is the backbone of this entire operation.
He basically knows all the stuff. There was a line that I think we forgot to mention with when they're with Marcus and they're talking about vampires, and Gorst is talking about stuff about he's explaining all this, and Kronos says what he doesn't know about vampires could fill a gnat's codpiece.
Yeah, such a weird line. Yeah,
it's a brilliant line.
I love that Marcus is leaving. Gorst comes up to him and like he just comes up behind him and he's just like, I play chess.
Yes, yeah.
He's like, okay, I've got brandy or something, or wine, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that's all you need to know. Is that's what they're going to be spending the evening doing.
Yeah, totally. And why not? But yeah, sorry.
Marcus, by the way, was in one of my favouritely bad Doctor Who stories. He's in Snake Dance.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
God, it's been a long time since I've seen that.
He's the sort of the guy who finds the cave and that. He's the
really yeah.
He's really pompous sort of.
Yeah.
What is he? Is he an archaeologist or something?
I think he's meant to be an archaeologist, right?
He's the really pompous dude that sort of shows Martin Clunes all the stuff. I love Martin Clunes in Snake Dance. He's so funny.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Kronos does RT sex, with
yes,
with like the very what can only be described as Star Trek lighting on the eyes. They're like lighting up the face. It's very 60s TV.
Carolyn Monroe never did nudity.
Right.
She turned down a lot of parts.
I thought they handled this really well. Actually, it's classy. So it's all like shrouded in darkness. It's cool.
What they did with this one is that they gave her flesh-colored underpants, and they taped her hair to her boobs. So you think you can pretty much see everything, but you can. It's I think it's really tastefully done.
Yeah, I think it works well. You know, because especially towards the end of Hammer, it kind of became exploitative and trashy, and this one feels, especially in this period towards the end, it feels almost the opposite of that. There's less of that stuff in this, and I kind of appreciate this movie for it.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, Colonel Monroe said, you know, that was the way movies were going at that point. Is that there was a lot more nudity, there was a lot more, you know, and she just sort of refused to do it. Which is, I mean, it's not to say that when you see most of her movies she's in, she's pretty much nearly got her boobs out in all of them. She certainly displays the goods.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, she in Golden Voyage, she's stunning.
She is absolutely gorgeous in that movie.
Stunning, and she's still an incredibly attractive.
Oh, I'm sure.
Now she's great.
So we go from that to a scene I still don't understand this scene at all. So we immediately cut to a woman apparently running from a man. She runs into a tree. She's like, oh my god, she's clearly distressed. Man starts groping her, holding her hands as if he's like forcing her into doing this.
Yeah.
But he's not, I guess, as it goes on. I don't quite understand, because like suddenly it's totally okay. And
my guess is she was playing hard to get.
Maybe. It certainly wasn't framed that way initially.
No, because it's supposed to make you think that she's being attacked, so.
But he is holding her very aggressive. Like, I don't know, I guess maybe it's just idiot kids. I don't know.
Yeah,
kids
basically.
being kids. In any case, they start kissing quite passionately. And then she's like, "Wait a minute, I saw someone over there." And he's like, "Ah, no, you're just imagining it. You're trying to stop me doing this assault." And she's like, "No, it was a really old man, like this ancient old fuck over there. I saw him." And she says, well, look, either way, I really should be going now. And this is where it all changes, because now he's sweet as he's very lovely. He's like, oh, well, I should walk you home. And she's like, oh, don't be ridiculous. Like, there's the edge of the forest. I live just past that. What's the worst that could happen in the next 100 meters? Just let me walk away. And they kiss and they agree to see each other tomorrow. He says he's going to wait and watch, doesn't he? He says, I'll watch you go.
And it does make you think, right, how many people at this point have been killed? 3, is it?
Yeah, the word has not gotten around.
This village is really dumb. They haven't, boarded everybody up.
It doesn't look like that big of a village either.
Sorry?
It doesn't look like that big of a village either. We've probably lost 50% of the village at this point. I always think when I watch this shot of her walking away that they were going to do a really effective shot, but he doesn't do it. Because I would have really liked it if she just went down one of the hills and didn't come back up. Because, because she walks down and then comes back up and walks down. And it would have been way more effective, I think, if she'd walked down one and just didn't come back up. But she doesn't. She comes up and then she collapses and screams and all that stuff.
And I'll say this for the bloody vampires in this movie. They feed quick.
Yeah, they are very fast. Yeah.
I mean, that she's drained in, seconds.
Yeah, she's ancient now. And dead almost immediately. Kronos gets woken up, and I do love that he instinctively grabs his katana.
Yeah.
Like, even in his sleep, he hears the door open, he grabs the katana straight away. And yes, he is told there has been another murder. Aging murder. So they head to the scene of the crime, and they interview the boy, and he's like, oh no, I don't know what happened. I was watching, and I didn't see anything, because basically he didn't. He just saw her kind of fall over, didn't he? And yeah, so they head to the scene of the crime and they start digging up toads. Marcus is very confused. But I cannot remember the exact poem.
Oh yeah, no, I can't.
But there is some naff poem about toads coming back to life if vampires walk over them, I think is the gist of it. So if they're dead toads, that's the idea. They're dead toads, and if there's a vampire in the vicinity, then the toad will come back to life. And as I said, this must require a billion toads to cover.
I found it. It's if a vampire should be bestrode close to the grave of a dead toad, then the vampire life shall give, and suddenly the toad shall live.
That is fucking awful.
Yes.
But fine, whatever. It's cool. So yeah, he finds a toad that has been brought back to life. Thus proving that it was definitely a vampire. And yeah, so they now know they are absolutely dealing with a life-sucking vampire. And as I said, Kronos surmises we're looking for someone very young. And they also find some wagon tracks nearby, further implicating the only people other than Kronos who has a wagon in this film.
Wagon, yeah.
But yeah, so they say, well, yeah, the wagon looks like it's going in that direction. We'll have to go and take a look. And he says, well, go fetch the horses, and they start heading off. But of course, Marcus says, actually, it would make more sense if I keep searching around here. So Marcus goes off on his own, leaving Kronos and Gerst to head off. I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah, it'd be alright.
Yeah. He sees the castle in the distance, doesn't he? Just as we're or manor, I guess, in the distance.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we cut to a very tense and relatively empty bar. As we see the barmaid and whatnot hanging about.
Yep. And a guy who looks like cut price Robert Zadar.
Yes, and he asks, "Where is he?" And she says, "Oh, he's up there." And then we see this Han Solo dressed motherfucker coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
He's just dressed like a fucking villain, basically, a scoundrel outfit.
Well, it's what's his name? Ian Hendry.
Yes.
So he played a lot of villains. Well,
I mean, he is great. He is great in the part.
Every time I see him, I am reminded of one particular scene, and it's from a movie that we've covered that no longer exists.
What?
It's from Get Carter.
Oh, no, you mean our review doesn't exist? I was going to say the movie must still exist.
Yeah, the movie definitely still exists. No, our review doesn't exist for some reason. It disappeared.
Do you know what? I'm going to say this. I think it's been long enough that I could probably redo that movie at some point.
What? Get Carter?
Yeah, because I think it's been,
I'm more than happy to do it. So he plays one of the...
Because it was a good review.
In Get Carter. And he's a chauffeur. And Carter walks up to him and he takes it. He's got these sunglasses on and he pulls the sunglasses down and he goes, "Piss holes in the snow."
Yes, yeah.
I always think of that line. He's got eyes like piss holes in the snow.
But yes, so him and his cronies head to the bar and start drinking. I love.
They were upstairs with a wench, weren't they? And they come down and she wants her payment and he gives her a coin and then she says, "Oh, you promised me more." And he chucks it in a spittoon. Yeah. I do love that as he approaches the bar, it's framed so that you can see the barman instinctively grabs a mallet. It's a mallet, yeah.
Just in case.
That barman, by the way, is the guy who played Lobot in Empire.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we see that he's, they're obviously an asshole.
He's a real cunt. Let's just put it that way.
To rub it in even more, there's a big guy stood there looking very unhappy with the way he's treating people, and he's like, "You didn't laugh at me humiliating that woman."
Yeah, well, you were laughing when I was making the poor wench even more horrible, miserable than she already was.
Yeah, and he says, I wouldn't dare laugh. But of course, he's too slow. This scoundrel, he's super fast with his sword.
Yep.
And he finds himself at the pointy end. Sorry?
He's got he quickly the big guy goes to pull his saber and he's already got his rapier out pointing at his chest.
Mm-hmm. And he makes him laugh.
Forces him to laugh, and basically gets him on the floor and then makes him the butt of their joke.
Yeah, I was always surprised he let him go. I kind of felt like he was going to murder him at that point.
Yeah, I guess he's didn't want to murder it just yet. He wasn't getting paid for it, I suppose.
Yeah, but then of course we hear the man in the corner tell him to get out, and he turns around, somewhat confused. He's like, you speak to him. What does his henchman say? When you speak to him, you speak softly or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I do better than that. I speak with money. Just like throws a coin purse at them, and he's like, okay, what do you want? And yeah, so we then cut to I think it's when Marcus heads to the manor.
Yeah.
In the meantime, and we get a little more villain talk, villain setup, I guess.
Yeah, with
adding to the misdirect, I think.
Dandy twin female.
Yes, dandy twin male and female, I think. Starting with the male. And
they do have that whole conversation, the two of them.
Oh, that's right. His name's Paul.
Mm.
It's Hammer's favorite goddamn name, Paul.
Oh, yes.
Like, we've discussed this before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Because I remember I watched this the other day, and it made me smile. I was like, of course his name's fucking Paul. There had to be a Paul in this movie. Sorry, go on.
They have a discussion. I think it's at this point they have a discussion about their mother and how, she says that she doesn't ever want to age, and she hates that.
She says, "Oh God," she sees it as like that's how I'm gonna end up.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll never end up like that because you're a Durant." And she's like, "Well, mother's a Durant too." And he's like, "She married into the family. She's not, she's not pure Durant." But then it's like, well, then that makes you're only like half Durant then, by your own admission then. Unless because it's not a stepmother, is it? It's an actual mother.
No, it's their mother.
Yeah. So.
No, but that's how that's how genealogy sort of works, isn't it? It's the whole father's bloodline sort of thing. So
yeah,
she doesn't count because she's not part of the bloodline.
Yeah, that's true. Moments after Marcus comes in, Paul approaches and he's drinking a brandy. And Marcus just looks down and is like I don't know, it's like Dictionary of Witchcraft and the Occult on the table or something. And he's like, that's weird. And Paul's like, oh well, it's my father's collection. I've finally gotten around to going through his library and sorting it out. And I'm like, oh okay, fair enough.
Yeah, nothing sus here at all.
No, nothing sus here at all. But yeah, so they kind of they're very kind to Marcus, at least to his face. And
you can tell they fucking hate him though.
Oh yeah. It's all very cordial, but please fucking leave. But then of course from Marcus's perspective and from their perspective, he's been blamed for the death of their father, effectively. He obviously tried to treat his father and failed. So yeah, and I think she even accuses him. She's like, you're looking at me funny. Have you detect some kind of malady in my face or something like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not keen. But as Marcus walks away, we hear the bell ring. Of course, it's the mother in bed who we see in bed. And so Paul heads up to see her. And she asks who it is, who was there, and he says, "Oh, it was Marcus. He was just passing through." And she says, "There is no road that passes through here." And Paul says, "Yeah, I know," which I think is a great setup to, he's a villain. When in reality, I guess Paul's looking at it more like, Marcus is just desperate to try and win us over, but it's not going to work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Kronos enters into the bar. We keep getting the shot of the blind woman in the bar, which I keep thinking is going to go somewhere, and it never does.
It doesn't, does it? It's really weird because they even have
kind of focus on her a bit, almost like there's a different cut where she has something to do.
Maybe, well, because the thing is, she's there. She's got like a jug of wine or something in it, and she's drinking.
Yeah,
and she's got the sort of the blindfold over her eyes, and there's even a bit where Hendry almost walks over to her, and you think, oh, what's he gonna? Is he gonna torment her now?
Yeah.
And the camera focuses on her. You get a full on sort of, view of her.
Yeah.
And then nothing.
No, nothing. It's odd.
She's just a traveler? Well, it's like, maybe she's the witch from Hawk the Slayer.
Yeah, maybe. It's a shared universe. So as soon as Kronos hits the bar, the group, the rabble start mocking him, saying that no one comes through here. The only people that come through here are people escaping the war or fleeing the war.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, what about you, Captain?" Because of course he's wearing the captain's coat. And he says, "Oh, tell me, did you lose battles or win them?" And of course, being the hero, he says, "Oh, a little of both."
And not enough of either.
Yes, not enough of it. Yeah, that's right, not enough of either.
I like that. Like, that's a good line. A little of both and not enough of either.
Yeah. But then, of course, they realize they're not going to get a rise out of him, so they go to Gorst.
Yep.
And I can't remember what they say. Don't they say something about, "Do you tell me when you sleep?
How he sleeps?
Yeah.
Does he sleep on his back or on a hammock, or does he dig a hole and put his hump in it?"
Yeah, it's weird as well because they don't make a huge deal. He is kind of hunchback, and you can kind of see it, but it's not massive to where, like, until they point it out here, I'd never noticed. I always thought he was just kind of old and crooked,
Yeah, I think
I think he is meant to be hunchbacked, though, the way they talk about it.
He is a hunchback, but I guess they I don't know whether they didn't want to emphasize it too much. I mean, they probably didn't want him, running around like Quasimodo.
Yeah, I guess they didn't want to go too far with it, maybe.
Because I think people that have hunchbacks generally are fine. They don't.
Yeah, totally.
They're not. They just have a slight, malformation. They're not, bent double and with their knuckles dragging the ground. So I guess they just wanted a little difference for him, I suppose. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But of course, Captain Kronos puts them all in their place, and he's like, "Oh, it's a terrible thing to make fun of people's physical afflictions. It's impolite and cruel." Yeah. And then he's like, "I could call you a poo-poo head."
He says, for instance, I could have called you, was it one rat face?
Yeah, he just gets really childish with it. I just love it.
What is it? It's rat face, something in big mouth.
Doesn't he say one of them's fat as well?
Oh, that's it. Rat face, fatty, and big mouth, I think is what he says.
That's right. Yeah. It just comes across really childish. It's like, are you 12?
Yeah.
Or like even younger, I guess. But
yep.
But yeah, and of course, oh my goodness, that them's are fighting words. You don't call him rat face. But before they can even draw their sword, and of course we saw how fast he draws his sword. Before he can even get close, Captain Kronos, in the blink of an eye, kills all three of them in a really awesome shot. It's probably the best shot of the movie.
It is. It's very cool. You just get the sort of the drawing of the sword, the brief flick, the blood sort of spurt, and then
I think the selling of the lead guy stumbling around after as well really sells it.
Yeah, because I like it. They're stood in a triangle, and the back two almost immediately drop. Yeah.
And then Kronos immediately turns back around to the barman. He's like, "You still haven't answered my question. Have any wagons come through here?"
And Henry, I like Henry does the dramatic sort of stumble around and fall into the table.
Yes, well, I think he's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. It's really cool.
Marcus,
again, like you said, it's very samurai.
It's very. It would be very spaghetti western, except without guns. They used swords, and therefore it feels very samurai. And of course, he's got a katana, which adds to that as well. It's a very cool scene, though. I think it's probably the if you had a moment to show from this movie, it would probably be that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Meanwhile, Marcus is on his way back to the gang when he is accosted by the hooded figure. And And yeah, he gets he gets got. We get some weird time stopping things going on, and
you don't quite know what happened to him.
no,
You don't really see it, but you know something's happened to him because he's got that drop of blood on his glove, hasn't he? And it's
yeah,
and he looks worried. He knows something's happened.
I guess
my guess is he's been wiped, as it were.
Somewhat infected, but not. Yeah,
because
it takes longer with him as well. Because he kind of gets back, doesn't he? And he starts having a wash, and then he sees his face, and he's like, "I'm getting older,"
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Gortz is talking about the mockery, which I think is actually quite a great, he's very well delivered line as well.
Yeah.
And she says to him, she's like, "Oh, beauty fades eventually, but personality,
Yeah, it's a kind soul. She says.
Yeah.
She says, "A kind soul lasts forever." And I like his smile at her is really great.
Yeah.
It's like, that's you did a good job there. Well done.
Well, I like Kronos follows up with you were given that body by God.
Yes.
Just remember that your body was given to you by God for a reason.
Yeah. Says that God gave me a friend to protect me.
Yeah. Which he did. And Kronos says, well, those men weren't sent by God. Those men were paid by someone to basically stop us. To ambush us and stop us. Marcus heads back in and basically says, we went over to the Durwoods, didn't see anything, and nothing of interest particularly happened. But because I think he also says he didn't see the coach, right? He was like, I didn't see the coach or anything.
Yeah.
And they briefly talk about the mother, saying, I hear she's bedridden now and whatnot. But yeah, so all is seemingly, they're kind of seemingly at an end of their investigation. They have no more leads. I think Gortz is he starts putting up the bells, doesn't he, everywhere to kind of I guess while they're making camp or whatever. Yeah, trying to find the location of this vampire. I will say there's a lot of shots in this movie where Kronos is kind of the shots of Kronos staring towards the camera are really awesome. But in any case, I think one of the bells rings, and of course that alerts Kronos, who immediately draws his sword and he heads off to try and find who or what it was, and of course it was a young girl who accidentally set it off.
Yeah. Another idiot girl just wandering around.
Another, yes, despite like half of her friends now being dead at this point, presumably. But they kind of laugh and watch on as she kind of goes about her business. We do occasionally cut back to Marcus looking a little more pale, but
yep. Clearly feeling a bit shady.
Feeling a bit ropey, yeah. But of course the girl screams out in terror. She's got a bat on her face. So yeah, the gang all kind of run as fast as they can to get to her. But yes, it is.
That is one of the shots that's not terribly good.
It's not terribly good. No,
clearly a fruit bat. Bat stuck on her.
Yeah, just hold this dead fruit bat in front of your face.
Just dead fruit bat.
But we see all of the smashed eggs covered in blood. Now you've pointed out, there are a lot of things just randomly covered in blood in this.
Yeah, we get the lamp later, and you get which I think is there's an anachronism with the lamp, but never mind.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of, considering that this is one of the only attacks where it's taking her blood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, actually. I think it is the only one, right?
Yeah.
Or at least directly.
I mean, the one in the church must have been drinking the blood as well because of the blood on the bell.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, but yeah, it's a little inconsistent with the sort of method of death, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, we get another shot of Kronos and what's her name? In sleeping in the hay together and kind of post sex, talking about the scars and he talks about the fact that he has once been bitten by a vampire.
Yeah, he talks about his sister and his mother. He went off to war, and when he came back, his sister welcomed him in his into her arms, and of course his sister and his mother had turned.
Yeah, and he basically had to kill them.
So he has those like little. He's got fang scars on his neck, hasn't he? And there is a cool line actually that we missed about when Marcus gives like earlier when I think it's after the bat after he's washed.
Yeah.
And Marcus says, he points at the long scar he's got on his side and says, my stitching holds up.
Yes.
He says about like being brave and stuff. And he says, I know you've got guts, Kronos. He says, I've seen them.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great line. Yeah.
That's a cool line.
Marcus, of course, bursts in on them, having seen himself in the mirror, and he says, look at my face. I'm changing.
His face is getting younger, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's got fangs. Which is a bit of a concern. Yeah. But yeah, he's still got his humanity, at least long enough for Kronos to punch him in the face.
I love that. It's sort of like it's a slightly janky shot of him when he sort of goes.
Well, it's because the face Marcus pulls is kind of goofy as well when he does the fang thing.
That's probably it.
It's quite comical. But yes, so Marcus has indeed fallen to the dark side, or is falling to the dark side, and now we see all of the foreshadowing from earlier, which is very unfortunate.
For poor Marcus.
For poor Marcus, they now need to work out how to kill a vampire, or this breed of vampire. And so poor Marcus is the guinea pig.
Yeah.
For that.
I think that's it's the whole thing is tragic.
Yeah.
But I don't think they film it the sort of the I guess the pathos well enough,
No, I agree. It
should be more, because they're supposed to be like almost best mates.
Yeah, they don't. It doesn't feel like that at all.
And it never really feels like that.
Kronos is like giving up on this fucker the second the fangs turned up. He's like, "Yeah, you're dead to me now, mate."
Yeah.
I think Marcus's performance is good.
Yeah.
But Kronos is just like, I guess they were like, no, you're the steely hero. You shouldn't show any emotion.
But it's not. He doesn't need to show emotion. He just needs to. There just seem to. There's no sort of registering of the tragic circumstances. Really, it just feels like it could have had some really nice sort of moments of.
I agree totally.
If they were just tweaked it a little, but yeah, Marcus his performance is great. He's strapped into this chair and
and then Gerst is like, well, I'll go get the stakes, you get the mallet.
Yep.
And I think they start with the stakes, right?
They start with the stakes. That doesn't work.
And of course, he's wearing a big cross already. So obviously crosses aren't going to work.
Working, yeah.
So they stake him, and that does not work. We do occasionally get the shots back to her outside, and we kind of hear the moaning, which is quite effective. I think that works quite well.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Then they see a hook from the ceiling, and they're like, "Oh, we could hang him over here." Just try that as well. And so they do.
And that's a really good shot. The shot
because they hang the whole chair as well, which I quite like.
The shot of them raising him up is done in shadow, and that's really nice.
That's an effective shot for sure. That's the thing with this movie. For every kind of naff shot, there are some really good shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But of course they're saddened to see he is still alive despite being hanged. And they've failed with that one. So they're thinking about now maybe we'll try some fire. And Gorst comes close with it to him with the fire.
Yep.
And I think it might be Kronos that actually stabs him with the cross by accident, right? Because he lurches forward and Kronos kind of steadies him, but I think he steadies him with the crucifix.
Yeah.
And of course he dies, and they're like, oh, well, like Gorst is like, I didn't even touch him with the flame. But then they realize it was actually the cross that stuck in him.
Mm-hmm.
So of course it's the steel of the cross that's caused the death of the vampire. And so it's time for Kronos to get a brand new sword, which
and you do get, so he his hair immediately sort of turns grey.
Yes, yeah, he turns old, doesn't he? Yeah.
And he does say, "Oh, I'm myself again" for a moment.
Yes, yeah, which is quite sweet. I think you're right. If they'd played more on the tragedy of the situation,
yeah,
that would have been way more effective.
Mm-hmm.
That moment of peace at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they now know how to defeat the vampire.
And we do get, there is one of the villagers has seen the whole thing through, has been watching through the window, and
yes,
he thinks that they've basically murdered the doctor.
Yes.
So he goes back to the village, as it were, to tell the locals that
he basically murdered him in cold blood.
It's mob time.
Yes,
quick.
we need a mob.
Get the torches and the pitchforks.
It's a Hammer movie. We need a mob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I must say, this isn't your usual peasant mob, because they've all got swords.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They've all got sabers. So this village was clearly like an ex-soldiers village, because everybody.
Well, they do say that, don't they? Like the thugs earlier said, like, oh, it's mostly people escaping the war or fleeing the war.
That's true. That is true.
So I guess maybe it is like, maybe he wasn't just being funny. Maybe it literally is.
Yeah, maybe they are. It's a village of like escapees and stuff. Yeah, maybe that's true.
Yeah, but of course they approach. Kronos is him and Gorst are readying the cross. Kronos does the really cool T-pose with the double sword.
Yeah.
As they approach.
The shot of them like unearthing the cross is quite cool as well. Like
yes,
to get out of the ground. That's a really nice shot. I really like that.
Yeah.
And while they're doing it, Carla notices the peasants coming up the hill and calls out to Kronos.
Yes, who immediately fights all of them.
Yeah. And I like it because sometimes it's a little too close.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool fight. And
I think it's really cool.
I like that he disarms them all. He doesn't he doesn't harm any of them. He basically disarms them.
Oh yeah, dude. The first time I watched this, I thought he was straight up going to murder the whole village.
Oh yeah.
Which would have been hilarious. It's like, you killed everyone.
I thought, why hasn't he killed them all? Why has he let them all go? And it's like, it's only later you go, well, they are just peasants.
They are just scared peasants. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he gives them a good hiding, and then they kind of head off, almost chuckling. Yeah. In fact, I think Gorst is chuckling.
He is, yeah. He's completely amused by it.
So they now have a giant cross with which to make their new sword.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we get the shots of the sword being made while Kronos does his meditations.
Yeah, he's doing his meditation he's voguing with his with a cloth on his face while Gorst is like hammering the hell out of this iron. This steel.
I'm assuming it's steel. Was it steel or iron? It might be.
Yeah, I think it's steel. I think it's supposed to be steel.
And
I always thought that is an ugly sword.
I know, it's such a shame because there's some really nice shots with it, but it is like you could have made it.
It's a crappy sword. I really hate it. It's like the swords he had already were really cool.
Yeah,
they could have made a nicer, cross sword, as it were.
Yeah, definitely.
But and I do love that when they've made it, and he's looking at, he's speaking to it, and you get that really cool transition where he sort of thrusts with the sword, and the thunder claps, and it cuts to the next scene, which is really cool. That's a really great transition.
Also very Hawk the Slayer-y.
Yes, that is a very Hawkins Slayer.
But yeah, it's a shame the sword looks so kind of rubbish. Because the concept is cool. And I guess you could argue they were in a hurry. It wasn't going to be like the most ornate thing
I
ever.
suppose they could have, you could say that, yeah, that it was, and I guess he's not a full-on blacksmith. He was doing the best he could, sort of thing. I suppose you could say as well.
He did make it as shiny as aluminium, so there is that. It's practically a mirror from this point on.
But that's that sort of collar it's got around a certain part of the blade, isn't it? Down to the hilt is sort of is what he uses as a mirror.
Yeah.
Which again, that's really cool. I like that. That's a really neat idea.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There are some really nice shots with the sword. It's just a shame that the sword is not so good.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the vampire kills another person. I think it just turns up to someone's house, doesn't it? It just kills a woman, and then you get the blood on the lamp.
Yep.
Kronos hears the cart, obviously tipping him off that the vampire is about, because the assumption now is that it must be whenever they found the cart tracks at every crime scene, effectively.
Yeah.
So they're relatively confident.
And the barman did say, like, no one's got a car around here, basically.
Exactly.
No one's come by, so...
Yeah. So they keep an eye on this cart, and they realise that it is indeed...
Well, he chucks a toad box out, doesn't he?
Oh, that's right. He chucks one of the dead toads, yes. As the cart rides over it, doesn't it?
It's not a cart, it's a carriage. As the carriage goes by... He chucks a box of toads at it.
Yes, and they're alive. So clearly, it is the vampire. We get the daughter at the graveside, and Kronos approaches and says, talks about her father and how incredible a swordsman he was, and that he never met his match in life. She kind of comes back with accepting God. He found his match in God.
Yeah. And that's when you get the sort of weird interaction with him and yours about but she's lovely and young, and it's like, yeah, all right, okay, I know you need to have this conversation, but really, are you that dumb?
Yeah. I guess he sees the best in everyone.
Yeah.
But yes, so yeah, they're pretty they're now entirely sure that it's the Durant kids that are the problem. And
basically, Carla agrees to be baked.
This is such a shit plan.
It's a terrible plan.
Because this vampire has literally killed people in a split second every time, and now they're like, "Hey, go give your young ass up to this vampire, and then we'll waltz in half an hour later and we'll kill it." And she agrees, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna die. I mean, she doesn't, but she should.
Yeah, she should have been.
She's got main character powers. That's the only reason she wasn't immediately murdered. Well, I mean, actually, no. Luckily, it wasn't the kids. That's the only reason she survived, actually. If it had gone as Kronos thought, they would have killed her straight away.
Well, she'd have been munched in seconds.
Yeah. It's only pure luck that she doesn't die here, because this plan is awful. I remember even as a kid thinking this plan was terrible.
Yeah, it's like, why would you do this? This is a stupid idea.
It's a really, really bad idea. So anyway, we cut to the Durant manor, and we see Paul with his mother for a bit, and they're kind of talking about the father and whatnot. But of course, as he comes downstairs, sees his sister, and then there is the knock at the door. Kronos and Gortz are waiting outside, watching as she kind of pretends to faint, right, and then he kind of takes her in. Yeah. So Kronos and Gortz kind of sneak around. He walks in a way that can only be stated as menacingly. The way he carries her in is like, you for someone who is not a villain, you are acting really villainous.
Well, I think that even
I mean, he's
though
an asshole. They're obviously assholes.
That's the thing, isn't it? Even though they're not the sort of the real villains.
They're not good people.
They're still rich assholes.
Yes, agreed, definitely. But they give her a drink and they say, you know, what were you doing out there? And she's like, oh, I was just getting more and more afraid and more scared.
She says that her father was going to force her into marriage.
Yes, yeah, she says it was someone I didn't want to marry, and
so I ran away.
And she says, you know, could I stay here for one night? And
again, Paul looks at her with like, you know, the most predator gaze.
God, yeah, it's awful.
He's full on like, oh yeah, you're gonna be in my bed later on. You know.
To be honest, credit where credit's due. Even his sister gives him fucking side eye during this. She's like, Paul, what the fuck? Like,
although she's probably more appalled because it's a peasant.
Well, that's true. Yeah, maybe it's not. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so they you know they offer to make her a bed. She says no, I don't want to impose.
And Carla says no, I'll just lie by the fire.
Yeah. Paul. Oh no, it's the sister actually. She menacingly locks the door.
Yeah.
He gives her the pillow, right, or the cushion. And they say good night to her. And to each other, but again, you do get them both menacingly looking from the stairs down at her as they leave.
Yeah. With she's gonna be lunch later eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And if not, it's quite like it's quite trusting of them to just leave this peasant downstairs and be like, no, don't rob the place. I mean, I guess they did. I guess they did lock the door.
They locked the door.
I guess in theory she's not going anywhere. But yeah, you're right. They do look at her like you're going to die. So yeah, in any case, Kronos, meanwhile, he has a grappling hook and he climbs his way to the top of the manor. Meanwhile, the cloaked figure appears and heads towards her. She kind of notices, right, but she kind of like hides under the sheets, as it were.
Yeah.
And ultimately she does she gets mesmerized into freezing. But Kronos does he gets there in the nick of time.
Well, no. So first of all, it's uncovered to be Lady Durwood.
Yeah, oh, that's right, because it pans down and you see the long skirt, don't you?
Yeah. So we get Lady Durwood, and then I think she kind of does scream. I think because the kids come down the stairs, don't they?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Before Kronos comes in. So they come down the stairs,
and then that's when they do that. Oh my god, her face, and it's meant to be like hideous face, but she's actually really young, and they're just shocked that she's so young.
She's pretty, and it's oh my god, mother! It's like what happened? And you get the sort of you get that shot of the old lady mask on the bed.
Yes. Yeah, which is quite cool. I quite like it when it cracks later. That's quite cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Because Captain Kronos is upstairs with the mask because he's putting the pieces together now. He's realizing that they made a mistake. Luckily.
And she basically, the mother explains that, you know, the father is still around.
Yes, I brought him back. Don't worry.
No, he was like, because like we're descended from the Karnsteins, and it's like, well, that's a nice little touch. I like that, you know, with the hammer.
He died of hideous bubonic plague. I've brought him back.
Yeah.
He looks disgusting, but he's alive.
Yeah.
He lives in complete misery for all eternity now.
And I think the kids do a pretty good job of being horrified by
I think it's a good twist. They do a good job of suddenly being like, oh no, this is awful. They are assholes, like you said, but you do kind of...
assholes.
You do feel, you know, a little for them.
Lady Durwood's played by Wanda Ventham.
Yes.
most famous, I think, for you being in UFO.
Mm-hmm.
She also has another claim to fame, which is she's Benedict Cumberbatch's mother.
Oh, is she? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's Benedict Cumberbatch's mother. She actually played his mother, well, and her husband. They played Sherlock's mother and father in an episode of Sherlock.
Oh, cool. So Mr. Durant finally appears, and she says, he needs to replenish on her, and so he pulls down the cloak and he goes to attack her when Kronos awkwardly jumps down and pushes him out of the way.
Yeah,
I think it was meant to look a lot cooler than it was.
Yeah, there's a couple of shots here that I think are supposed to be a little more dramatic, though they look a bit clumsy, and that's one of them.
You get the sword bit when he shows her reflection in the sword, and she looks.
Yeah, that's really cool because he sort of reflects, because she tries to mesmerize him, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he reflects it back on her, and she kind of
back on her with the sword, which is really cool. I like that. That's again that's a nice little touch with the sword.
Yeah, it's cool.
So the dad, as it were,
the elder Durant, yes, who is the master swordsman we heard about earlier.
Well, he's William Hobbs. So he was a choreographer.
Oh,
so
cool.
All the fight scenes he choreographed.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Not only that, so he was the choreographer of the Michael York Musketeer movies.
Mm.
He was the choreographer on
those are actually the choreography in those are great.
I love those fucking movies. Those are my favourite Musketeer movies.
They're very good.
Partially because they were also written by George MacDonald Fraser, who wrote the Flashman books.
Mm.
But yeah, they're funny and they're brilliant, and they've got like Christopher Lee in, and it's got so he choreographed the fights on The Duelists, which is one of my favourite movies.
We've covered it.
Which we have covered, yeah.
Great movie.
Flash Gordon, Excalibur, Lady Hawk, Willow.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Dangerous Liaisons, right up until Game of Thrones.
Wow.
So he was a really prolific fight choreographer, and he acted a few things as well. I think this is probably his biggest sort of acting role.
And then they fight for fucking ages. Is there?
It's a
there's
really
some
fight.
Really nice bits.
They go across the table. They
I love when he cuts him and he sees the blood in his hand and he's like, "Yes, you will bleed." He said, "This is God's blade forged to defeat your black heart," or something like that. It's really cool. It's
really cool because the fight goes back and forth, and you get. Which I think it's a really well done fight.
Well, I will say it makes more sense now that I know he was a choreographer, because this fight scene is definitely a step up on, some of the other
Hammer fight scenes.
Yeah, 100%.
So he basically to show how good he is, he actually disarms Kronos.
Yes.
Kronos loses the sword, and
there is definitely a moment where Kronos could get it back, but doesn't for reasons.
He goes for there's a sword mounted on the wall of the stairs, and just to get that. And I love that he stabs him. He thrusts right through him, and then for the rest of the fight, he's got this sword sticking out of him. Yeah,
that's a really cool thing, because even when he falls to the ground, he's still got the sword through him.
Yeah.
I love it when Kronos uses the kids as a human shield.
Yeah, and it's really cool. But not only that, he uses them as a human shield. But what the cool thing is that the father is clearly doesn't give a fuck about his kids, because he's trusting. And it's Kronos that deflects the blade away from the
kids. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's him that, even though he's using her as a shield.
I guess he was hoping that it would work, but when he realized it wouldn't, he didn't want her to die.
Saving the daughters from the father's blade, which again is really cool. I love
it.
It
is, yeah.
That.
Yeah.
He uses he gets his own hands quite bloody trying to grab the sword and things. And then you get that really nice sort of moment on the stairs where it looks like he's about to die, and you can see it coming.
When he says to him, "You can't hurt me, Kronos," but at that moment you see Gert sees the sword on the table.
You do get the slight comedy moment of Gorst coming in through the same through the I guess the skylight of the bedroom, the same way that
Quasimodo
Kronos did, but a lot less gracefully, which is actually quite funny.
It feels quite Quasimodo-y to me, that, I must admit.
He plonks down on the bed sort of thing and struggles to get up, which is quite funny. And of course he makes it, and he grabs the god's sword from the table and throws it to Kronos.
And then Kronos drives it through him, and he immediately, his hair turns grey and he collapses to the floor. I do like that the mother cries blood.
Yeah,
it's kind of a cool
yeah, and
thing.
What's so cool about that shot is that she's even though she's sort of frozen, you can see in her eyes the sort of the pain. That's actually a nice performance.
Yeah, she does give good eye performance. Yes, yeah. I agree. But yeah, so she's not bloody happy about it. And she's crying from her eyes, and she goes to basically attack Kronos with her bare hands.
Yeah.
And then she dies.
Yep, she gets it too. And we see the mask cracks. And you get that great shot where she turns around and she's like completely mummified again, like the age she presumably was. And I like the shot of the two corpses on the floor, which are just basically just rotting skeletons, which is really
yeah, it's very cool. So they have they've defeated them. Kronos just drops the sword next to them and it's like, you should probably keep that, dude. Is that not going to be useful if you come across this breed of vampire again?
Why would you fucking just drop it?
Oh no, I'll just make Gorse make another one for me.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Fuck you, Gorse, you can
You spent all night doing that, dude. Like... So we get to the final scenes, and Kronos says, to the love of his life, come with me forever, and she's like, I would love to. Is how that you would think happen, but no, he says goodbye to the deceased Marcus as he's about to leave. She stares at him and says, "Oh, you must be going now," and he's like, "Yep, okay, bye."
Yep.
I'm just like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, it's again, it's the Western ending, isn't it?
It is, but it's kind of like she doesn't have anywhere to live anyway, so it's like you could just go with them. You've got nothing keeping you here. It's not like you've got family or anything whatsoever.
Although, to be honest, there are plenty of peasant homes that are now free.
Well, I wonder if she was sizing up Marcus's house. If I'm honest, she's like, this could be mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna move into the Marcus's house.
She could become the new doctor. She's like, I'm not a doctor, but I could take a look.
Oh dear me.
I'm not a doctor, but I can give out medical advice. And yes, that is it for Kronos Vampire Hunter. I love this movie.
We should also mention Julian Holloway, who was actually the voice of Kronos.
Oh, really? Yes, I did notice it was dubbed, but
yeah, because Horse had quite a strong German accent, so they decided to go with it, and
it works well enough.
Julian Holloway has done so many voices. He's done like voices for loads of cartoons, like Star Wars things and stuff. He was in a lot of Carry On movies,
right?
And
do you know? I was only thinking the other day. I don't think I've watched a Carry On movie since I was a child. Like it's been so long since I've seen any Carry On movies.
I occasionally watch Carry On Up the Khyber.
Oh, that's great. That's one of the better ones.
Because that one and Carry On Screaming.
Yes.
They're kind of my favourites.
Uh-huh. So it's just been a long time since I've seen them.
I really like the Carry On movies. I mean,
I don't dislike them. It's weird because it's from the same kind of era as a lot of the other stuff I used to watch.
Yeah,
but
the thing about the Carry On movies is again, very much like Hammer, they changed as they went along.
Yes, they were. I think people remember them for what they ended up being, not what they actually were.
Exactly. If you watch a lot of the early black and white ones, they're really good movies. That are really funny sort of movies that still have some of the innuendo and stuff.
But nowhere near as much smut as the later ones.
It's not quite as smutty, and you don't get a lot of the boobs that you got later. But a lot of them I think still hold up. A lot of them are still funny, and I love Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams is one of my favourite.
Kenneth Williams is amazing. It's funny because like I still rewatch like Norman Wisdom and things like that to this day, but not so much Carry On. And I was funny enough thinking the other day, I was like, I might actually have to rewatch some Carry On movies.
I think the problem is that there are a lot of fucking duds.
I'm not going to go back and I'll only watch greatest hits. I'm not going to.
I think Kyber still holds up.
Screaming
does. Screaming's a real anomaly because it doesn't really have. It has a lot of actors in it that weren't the normal cast.
Yes.
Which is interesting, and it's got some nice stuff in it that I like a lot. The Cleo still holds up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the earlier ones like Constable and Sergeant, the black and whites. Carry On Spying, I still think is fun. That's really good. That's one of the really old black and white ones.
Yeah.
Some of the things like At Your Convenience and there's one, I can't remember which one it is now. It's the one where they've got like a dating agency. That's pretty bad.
I vaguely remember that. I remember Carry On Matron.
Matron still holds up. Matron and Doctor still hold up. Yeah, I still like the Carry On movies. And then, yeah, he was in which one was this? He was in. I'll try and find what they were. I know he was in a lot of them. He was in a number of them. Hang on, where is it? So he was in Carry On Doctor, Carry On Up the Khyber. Oh yeah, he was Major Shorthouse in Carry On Up the Khyber. Carry On Camping, Carry On Loving, Carry On Henry, Carry On At Your Convenience. So he was in a lot of the Carry Ons. Yeah, he was a really cool actor. And loads. He was in Avengers and all sorts of stuff from the TV days.
Yeah.
So yeah, a really cool guy actor that they chose to and he actually died not that long ago as well. So he.
Oh really? Okay. So it's another tribute for this show.
Yeah, 16th of February he died.
Oh wow. Oh okay.
So, yeah, really quite recently.
Yeah. But in any case, that was Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. I definitely recommend this one if you just want to have a fun time with an adventure romp with a little bit of horror.
And that's it. It's a really nice swashbuckling adventure. A set of really mostly well done 70s swashbuckler that could have been better, but and it could have been a nice franchise.
I totally would have loved to have seen more.
Yeah,
especially if it was different kinds of vampire each time.
Yeah,
I think
it had the potential to get better as it went along.
Absolutely.
As everybody got into their roles and things, it would have been nice.
Yeah. But I definitely recommend it. I think it's good fun.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, next week we will be back with our usual new movie thing. I know you've seen a couple of things while you were ill, and I will watch a few things this weekend. And yes, we will be back next week with new movies. But until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.